Welcome to Daylight. Today is April 28th, 2026. In a world increasingly fraught with uncertainty, the pressures of geopolitical instability demand a critical reevaluation of our survival tactics. With experts warning of impending resource shortages, the latest investigative report has revealed a pressing need for a strategic vision, stocking food supplies that go beyond conventional wisdom. As panic buying reaches unprecedented levels, a growing awareness underscores that success in these turbulent times hinges on preparation and foresight, knowing what to prioritize amid widespread rushes on supermarket shelves. The recent findings unveil a stark truth. Many individuals resort to the same popular items, leading to rapid depletion of essential goods within hours. Current events reflect not only a reaction to immediate threats, but a broader context of ongoing supply chain disruptions and food security concerns shaped by geopolitical maneuvers. As we dissect this crucial list of 11 foods that experts recommend we secure now, we seek to empower our viewers with the knowledge to make informed decisions. Because when the next panic ensues, being methodical in our approach may very well mean the difference between scarcity and security. The current landscape of food security is punctuated by alarming reports of impending crises, driven by geopolitical escalations and economic instability. With many experts predicting significant price increases, particularly in the context of the ongoing conflict characterized by disruptions to global supply systems, the demand for strategic stockpiling of food is gaining unprecedented attention. The reports emphasize the necessity of preparing for a potential spike in grocery prices, specifically noting a possible rise of 20% in the near future, correlating closely with the current military and economic tensions affecting agricultural production and resource availability. In the immediate context, panic buying behaviors reminiscent of previous crises are re-emerging. Heavy grocery shelves that once seemed abundant are now anticipated to bear the empty symptoms of supply chain strain. As agricultural ministers note the possibility of a 20% price inflation in food costs, sentiments from farmers reflect decades of frustration and uncertainty. The challenges facing these producers abound: rising fuel costs, limited fertilizer supply from key exporting countries, and the looming specter of abandoned paddocks as farmers opt not to plant crops. The complexity of this situation underscores a broader reality. It is not simply individual crises affecting each sector in isolation. Rather, there exists a convergence of factors, including logistical challenges, heightened input costs, and geopolitical maneuvering that threaten the agricultural landscape both domestically and internationally. One specific factor identified as contributing to this precarious situation is the international fertilizer market. With disruptions stemming from fertilizer supply cuts by major exporters like Russia and China, farmers face a reality where the tools of their trade are rendered increasingly inaccessible due to inflated costs or unavailability. Scott, an observer of these dynamics in Australia, elucidates this challenging picture, articulating that nearly one-third of global fertilizer trade is constrained by geopolitical conflicts. This significant tightening places immense pressure not just on input costs, but on the operational timelines that dictate the success of agricultural efforts. Consequently, farmers find themselves grappling with the difficult decision to abandon planting or transition to less fertilizer-intensive crops, further exacerbating the uncertainty of food supply. Beyond fertilizer, the critical reliance on diesel underscores another layer of complexity in the agricultural supply chain. The doubling of diesel prices directly impacts farming operations, from cultivation to harvest and transportation. With logistical scenarios painted in stark terms, farmers are left questioning whether they will have the necessary resources to execute even basic agricultural processes. Observations about fuel delivery disruptions highlight an unsettling reality where resource allocation favors those willing to pay a premium, leaving traditional suppliers at a loss. Further, the ongoing discourse about agricultural policy shines a light on a failure to adequately prepare for crises that could have been mitigated through comprehensive planning. With a dependency on imported goods, be it fuel or fertilizer, Australia's food security has become inextricably linked to the health of global markets. Experts echo a similar sentiment regarding the potential for future crises, suggesting that Australia's geographic isolation and import dependency set the stage for an acute food crisis, unlike that of countries with more substantial agricultural independence. Scott's calls for systemic reform point to the necessity for national reevaluation of agricultural resilience strategies, demanding a shift from reactive measures in favor of proactive governance that prioritizes self-sufficiency. In tandem with the escalating prices, the psychological and social dynamics of panic buying are highlighted as indicators of growing unease among the populace. This behavioral response may trigger a cyclical pattern where scarcity breeds panic, resulting in further depletion of essential goods. Comparisons drawn to previous experiences of societal distress, such as early COVID-19 uncertainty, signify that the lessons learned have yet to be fully integrated into contemporary preparedness frameworks. As concerns resonate with both producers and consumers, strategic stockpiling enters the conversation as a vital measure towards resilience. The identification of crucial food items to secure, those that command attention when panic strikes, becomes essential. Reports indicate that many are gravitating towards traditional staples such as rice or canned goods, highlighting that while these are critical, they are also among the first to vanish due to high demand. This emphasizes the critical need for a diversified approach to stockpiling methods. Specific recommendations for what to include in such stockpiling efforts favor a selection of foods that not only provide sustenance, but also versatility and longevity. In this framework, strategic sourcing becomes paramount. Turning to less frequented international markets, consumers can find greater availability of essential supplies, even amidst widespread shortages. This holistic strategy to stockpiling suggests that knowledge of diverse markets, international stores, specialty grocers, could become an essential part of personal and household planning for an uncertain future. In conclusion, the collective insight garnered from agricultural projections, geopolitical observations, and consumer behaviors presents a compelling argument for both immediate action and long-term strategy. As we face the possibility of critical shortages and surging prices in vital food categories, preparation based on informed decisions becomes essential. Acknowledging the interconnectedness of these elements, individuals, families, and communities can better navigate the tumultuous waters ahead, empowering themselves against the backdrop of geopolitical challenges and domestic market realities. Reports indicate an alarming trajectory for British farming that is increasingly reflective of a systemic collapse, as articulated in a recent observation. The individual behind this assessment, having traversed tumultuous regions and witnessed dire situations, emphasizes the unrelenting nature of Britain's agricultural deterioration. He articulates that the nation is sleepwalking into a food crisis, an assertion underscored by the staggering statistic that since 2020, there has been a 40% increase in the number of farms going out of business. This deterioration is not just a fluctuation in agricultural fortunes, but has transformed Britain from a leading agricultural producer in Europe to a nation on the precipice of needing to import 90% of its food sources. The gravity of this shift raises critical questions about national food security and independence at a time when Britain needs to reassess its agricultural policies. Numerous factors converge to create this perfect storm, collapsing what was once a robust agricultural sector. A significant contributor cited is the government's pursuit of net zero farming policies. In an attempt to balance environmental sustainability with agricultural production, the government has slashed subsidies while expecting farmers to increase their output. This approach presents a paradox. Farmers, working on already thin profit margins of 3 to 5%, are now being asked to pay more for their inputs, while receiving less assurance of government support. The concept of enhancing food production while reducing fiscal support for the farmers is fundamentally flawed and unsustainable. The situation is exacerbated by a myriad of additional pressures, notably the skyrocketing costs of fertilizer, 5 times what it was 3 years ago, deriving largely from geopolitical tensions, notably Russia's role in global markets. There is recognition that without appropriate fertilizer, food production itself is jeopardized, underscoring the fragility of the link between chemical availability and food security. Moreover, the dynamics of importation add a complex layer of vulnerability. The importation of food products from regions that do not adhere to the same stringent health and safety regulations as the UK undercuts local farmers, further driving them toward insolvency. The narrative points to a troubling irony, suggesting that farmers are effectively undermining their livelihoods by operating in a system structured to favor cheaper imports over domestic production, thus hollowing out the country's agricultural capability. Interest rates and bureaucratic complexity also come into focus as pertinent factors. High borrowing costs coupled with convoluted regulatory requirements render profitability increasingly elusive for farmers. The emphasis on complex forms and compliance more often steals time that farmers could otherwise use for actual production. It is highlighted that the government appears disinterested in the plight of farmers, using the excuse of modernization to alienate a crucial sector of the economy generating food. Contrasting Britain's agricultural situation, parallels drawn with historical famines illustrate the catastrophic potential of mismanagement in food production. According to some experts, the triangle of death, pandemic, famine, and war, converges ominously, suggesting a pattern where infrastructural neglect could devolve into crisis scenarios seen in past eras. A suggestion is made that population pressures combined with the political instability that often accompanies such strife could reintroduce famine as a reality in Britain should existing trends continue unaddressed. The human element is stark. Reports indicate that farmer suicides have surged by 40% in light of these unrelenting pressures. In the context of impending crises, an examination of survival strategies is also put forth. Observations have emerged about how to navigate scenarios when food scarcity escalates into outright famine. The necessity of preparedness is emphasized, particularly for urban populations, where desperation could lead to a breakdown of social order. The alarming prediction that people go to cannibalism within 2 weeks underscores the dire urgency surrounding food access. Advice shared within a framework of community preparedness reflects a crucial pivot, emphasizing that survival in a famine scenario necessitates collective action and resource sharing among communities. Forming networks that utilize members' unique skills could be a viable strategy for those wishing to endure such crises. Putting all elements into perspective, it is clear that Britain stands at a critical juncture, with insufficient attention directed at agricultural resilience amidst a deepening crisis in food production. The decisions being made now, a synthesis of policy, economics, and social awareness, will echo into the future, potentially determining the country's food sovereignty for generations to come. The need for reform, particularly in how farming is subsidized and supported, is pressing, as is the appeal for public engagement and accountability from government entities. The call for action is not merely an echo, it resonates as a plea for national unity, highlighting the pivotal role each individual can play in not just discussing food security but engaging actively in sustaining the agricultural foundation of the nation. Talents and traditions developed across generations must not be lost, ensuring the next generation can farm and feed the country adequately. The assertion that, within a decade, if we don't change course, Britain won't be able to feed itself, presents an urgent battle cry for critical reappraisal of agricultural priorities and the systems supporting them, a matter not of mere inconvenience but national security. A recent analysis suggests that the escalating conflict involving Iran is driving the globe towards a potential famine, catalyzed predominantly by geopolitical tensions and critical shortages of essential resources such as oil and fertilizer. The Iranian standoff, particularly regarding its nuclear capabilities and the Strait of Hormuz's blockade, has raised alarm bells within international circles. If Iran were to effectively leverage its position by disabling oil and fertilizer shipments through this vital trade passage, experts warn that it could precipitate a global crisis. The economic ramifications of this conflict are expansive. The majority of fertilizer consumed worldwide, estimated between 20 to 30%, traverses the Strait of Hormuz. The closure of this vital shipping lane could chop off food supplies to regions reliant on these imports. consequently leading to declines in agricultural output. A prominent economist noted ominously that without fertilizers, the potential exists to reduce global food production drastically, pushing the world closer to famine. An unsettling scenario emerges wherein countries like India may run out of fertilizer in a matter of months, prompting severe food shortages. Compounding these worries are the implications of rising oil prices, which can ripple through the global economy and further exacerbate food insecurity. The report cites a 20% expected surge in food prices, driven not only by the limitations on fertilizer, but also by shrinking energy supplies as outlined in discussions around the ongoing conflict. Countries traditionally reliant on energy imports are finding their vulnerabilities exacerbated by processing disruptions and insufficient capacity to adapt to sudden shortages. Countries like Australia, for instance, have alarmingly short fuel reserves, projected to sustain only about 30 days of essential supplies. Additionally, the complexities of the political situation are manifold. With the U.S. led by President Trump openly pursuing military intervention with the endorsement of allies like Israel, the gridlock of diplomacy about the Iranian conflict continues to stoke tensions. A noted expert characterized Trump's strategy as risky, entwining personal ambition with broader geopolitical stakes. A pump and dump tactic that seeks to leverage oil prices for personal gain while neglecting the broader ramifications such actions could have on food security. Observers claim that the perception of the conflict is misaligned, with media focus on oil prices overshadowing the domestic comfort that may arise from a parallel crisis in the agricultural sphere. The discussion shifts to the psychological aspect of the situation. The propensity for panic buying, reminiscent of previous societal crises such as the COVID-19 pandemic, is resurfacing as citizens gear up for potential shortages. This fear-driven behavior creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more people rush to stockpile limited resources, the faster stocks dwindle, exacerbating anxiety and desperation among consumers. The report urges individuals to approach stockpiling as a strategic endeavor, advocating for the collection of non-traditional staples that might not yet be in demand but are poised to become essential as crises intensify. This diversified approach to stocking up could position households better against impending challenges. Responding effectively to this landscape embodies a nuanced preparation plan that acknowledges the complex interplay of variables at play. Geopolitical decisions, agricultural policies, and economic vulnerabilities all intertwine to create an uncertain future. Historical patterns reveal that societies frequently fall prey to neglecting food sovereignty, a lesson underscored by various nations throughout the years. As the narrative around self-sufficiency begins to manifest, experts call for a drastic shortcut in conventional energy reliance, leading to more resilient local agricultural systems. The urgency of these discussions becomes palpable amid the continual evolution of military operations in the Middle East. Public sentiment is resonating with a deeper concern, as insecurity stemming from direct military confrontation could spill over into civilian life with dire consequences. Evaluating the dynamics surrounding NATO's commitment to protecting European allies also underscores the intricate web of obligations that could spread vulnerabilities across multiple nations. As the instability fosters a climate of apprehension, there are calls to action to galvanize local communities towards self-sufficiency and resilience. Initiatives could foster local food production efforts, emphasizing sustainable practices as systems are developed to cope with unpredictable external pressures. An astute observer pointed out that while economic uncertainty looms, fostering independent agricultural frameworks can serve as a bulwark against disintegration in established supply chains. If history is any guide, the nations that prioritized self-reliance amid crises have emerged more resilient. In the context of forthcoming developments, the complexities of the Iranian negotiations and military undertakings remain precarious. As the discourse continues to evolve, the necessity for citizens worldwide to actively engage in critical discussions on food security, agricultural independence, and geopolitical maneuvering could pave pathways towards more informed decision-making and preparedness. Drawing wisdom from past atrocities and localizing efforts in advance will not only warrant discussions, but could also become necessary attributes essential for the survival of communities amidst potential famine and resource depletion. Experts recommend vigilance and involvement, emphasizing that the convergence of economic principles and social engagement is imperative for confronting what lies ahead. The alarming predictions from financial analysts serve as a clarion call for a reconsideration of modern agricultural frameworks and policies, necessitating a holistic redirection towards sustainable practices and a reimagined geopolitical calculus. As the 2026 landscape is shaped by these compounded crises, the collective responsibility to navigate these tumultuous waters has never been clearer. Final anchor sign-off. As we conclude today's broadcast, we find ourselves navigating through tumultuous waters of geopolitical tension. The expert commentary from Steve Keen has illuminated some harrowing predictions. A potential famine stemming from financial instability and escalating conflict, particularly focused on the critical balances of power within the Middle East. In our analysis, we must consider the gravity of these events and their broader implications for global stability. The interconnectedness of economies and the fragility of power structures mean that the repercussions of actions taken by any singular nation could resonate across continents, affecting millions who are already vulnerable. The scenarios outlined not only reflect a theoretical landscape of conflict, but also serve as a stark reminder of the fragility of peace. In contemplating the collapse of critical infrastructure or the escalation of military engagements, we are drawn to a philosophical reflection. True progress cannot emerge from discord, and the stakes today are greater than they have ever been. As we move into the days ahead, the decisions we make now will shape our futures. We urge our viewers to remain informed, engaged, and vigilant as developments unfold in the coming weeks. This is not merely a moment in time, it is a pivotal juncture that could redefine our world. This has been Daylight News TV, where seeking truth means confronting uncomfortable realities. Thank you for joining us, and until next time, stay safe and informed. Good night.